Now we're going to move on to some gaming news. I got a couple gaming videos, and then we're going to hit the really heavy stuff up here. All right, so Bellular news.
Normally the law feels like a faraway thing that you and I can't really feel a lot of the time in our real lives. But for gaming, 2025 proves that that is not the case, because it's the year where the law and politics came for gaming. US tariffs drove prices up while the EU...
Gaming is about to get more expensive. Hold on, I'm just checking on something real quick. Oh, okay, cool. All right, so gaming is about to get more expensive. A global trade standoff means the prices of your games and hardware could increase. More than that, it could also change the face of the games industry forever.
You tried to keep them down. Regulators demanded fairer deals for platform holders. Governments around the world attempted to protect children by making things more inconvenient.
Okay. This is one thing that I do want to watch. I do want to learn more about. But the Online Safety Act, my understanding of it is, and I could be wrong, is it could be having age verification and certain things so minors cannot interact with certain content online. I don't agree with that. To me, that's the government overstepping and doing the job of the parents, whereas the parents should be monitoring what the kids do.
Convenient for adults, which absolutely will work. And yes, there's the legal side within the industry. Lawyers tearing each other apart, like with Nintendo and Palworld. But these stories, the ones of today, those are the people who lead our nation, showing us that, well, you can try to keep the politics out of video games, but video games exist within the world. You know, I'm getting in some real, we live in a society shit. But, well, we do. And that society's got laws.
You never keep politics and gaming
can come from the video games.
You never do
and that is today's video. Our year started off as one where games got more expensive, and not just because executives needed another yacht. No, the US government's tariff policy threw international trade into a state of disarray. When first proposed, the Consumer Technology Association suggested that consoles...
So these are when tariffs were first proposed. Damn. Video game consoles went up by 39.9%, computer accessories by 10.2%, value of lost consumer spending power due to higher prices. 6.5 billion for video games. Damn, so the cheapest thing on this list is certain connected devices and lithium-ion batteries.
could increase by up to 40% in price. And rarely enough, when it comes to headlines, I can follow that up by saying, and they pretty much did, actually. I mean, the Switch 2 launched at a price that made eyes water. Xbox, driven by a Microsoft mandate to maintain margins, raised prices twice globally over the year. PlayStation took a different tack. They only raised prices outside of the US. Effectively, they subsidized the American market by increasing prices elsewhere. I think
so, I don't agree with Sony doing that. I mean, I don't agree with prices going up at all. Obviously, I pay for this stuff and, you know, I want it to be as cheap as possible. I don't agree. I agree a little bit more with what Microsoft did by raising its prices globally than I do by Sony raising prices everywhere but the US.
Almost certainly because they know it's core to their business, especially the premium aspects of their business, that they defend their US market share. But the tariffs and the reaction did have a bit of a chilling effect. I mean, do you want to know why we don't have a RRP for Steam machines yet? Well, part of that is because in February, the Lenovo Legion Go S was announced at $499, but by the time it actually released only a few months later, it was $599. Companies had to pay more to bring products into the US as tariffs fluctuated, and many simply refused to cut their profit margins any further.
I mean, that's why you make the shit in the US. I mean, tariffs could be a good and bad thing. tariffs will definitely help like the American economy, and I can see why the president's doing that. But at the same time, companies are also pushing all the costs of the tariffs off on us, which is not a good thing. Just build a plant here in the US and make this shit in the US, bro.
And all that happened before we really started to feel the AI data center surge and the chaos it has caused with RAM
Man,
and
fuck the
GPU
AI
availability.
shit.
Good luck if you want a new NVIDIA gaming GPU in 2026 because they're slashing production 30 to 40%.
Yo, I saw that. I saw that shit, bro. That's why I finally made the plunge. I went out and I got myself a 5070 Ti to finally upgrade from the 3070 Ti I'm using. Because they slashing GPUs by about half. Some are 40, some are 50. I even read some articles that, and again, it's the internet. Not everything on the internet's true. But I even read some articles where they're saying up to 60% are being slashed. Certain models like the 5060 Ti's, 5070 Ti's, from my understanding, are being completely done for. They won't be making them anymore. And prices, I believe, were going to be raised on like the lower end 50s by like 20%. And I think they said it could go upwards of like 30 to 35% on like the 5080s and 5090s. Again, this is just what I'm reading.
Well, there's another thing tariffs posed a risk to: physical games. And that's even the case, even if the tariffs
Physical
barely
games are
impacted
dying.
them. Because the tariffs
Everything's
are a
about
good
digital now.
justification for the industry to do what it's always wanted to do. You see, since most games intended for the US market are actually printed on discs in Mexico, companies might simply make fewer as margins just got even tighter on a product that was trending downward in sales anyway. So in effect, it's the global economic system that brings you your games being under pressure, and you actually feeling that pressure. And I've said all that before I've even mentioned many people's increasingly limited ability to afford said games.
Yeah.
And of course,
Yeah,
an
with the way the
industry that
fucking
wants
market
games
is.
to go digital. Because on digital, the big platform holders do have far more control over pricing. They don't have a second-hand game being resold, because in that case, they don't make any money. So this is all a perfect excuse to go discless, both in consoles and the production of disc games. But before I leave the land of freedom, there was even a brief period where the US government literally banned a game, though it was in the form of the TikTok ban. Basically, it ended up blocking access to Marvel's along with some other games published by its shared owner. Because of course, games are international with funding coming from all over the world, and that means that the knock-on effects are felt everywhere. And if you're in the States, maybe you'll feel some of that coming from the EU. America aren't the only ones with a new sourcebook full of rules to apply to trade and to video games, because the EU has been trying to get prices under control, or at the very least, they've been trying to do that on premium currencies. And that's been a major...
The EU's been trying to get prices under control for the last, 5 years or so, since COVID started, basically. Once the global supply chain crashed, what was it? Beginning of 2021 or mid 2021, something like that. When the global supply chain just kind of crashed, the EU's been working on this to get prices under control for years. I mean, they had all of those farmer riots and stuff going on in France, and I think it was Belgium. And new trade deals going out that's causing havoc in the EU.
story this year. Earlier on in the year, the European Consumer Organization ruled against Star Staples, the Swedish horse girl game that we've all came to love in this channel. And what they did was take it to task for targeting kids unfairly. And that led to them creating a set of principles for premium currencies. Things like rules in displaying prices, proper refund options, an end to FOMO marketing, and many other.
Didn't that start? Yeah, that started with EA and Battlefront 2. The whole loot box and premium currency debacle that they had in the EU. I don't remember if they banned it or they very highly discouraged it, but if I remember correctly, I think they banned Battlefront 2 from being sold in there, or at least having the copies with the loot boxes.
Other things. And what was most striking is that they were enforcing all of this under existing EU law. And that was the big thing that would actually make this tangible. And they even claimed they didn't need to wait for the Digital Fairness Act in 2026 to make their stuff enforceable.
No,
and rather understandably, the EU games industry wasn't thrilled at this development. But their frustration did go beyond potentially losing money. Though I think money was probably a large part. By insider accounts, all of this was imposed on them with little to no consultation or thought for the actual implementation. And apparently, they made a mistake in not even talking to other EU bodies properly. Something that's very messy considering there's going to be new laws covering similar ground next year under the Digital Fairness Act. The argument for all of this rages on, but suffice it to say, this issue is on the EU's radar, and maybe those changes will permeate throughout the world. We'll have to wait and see. I have to imagine, though, that because a lot of this is handled digitally, it probably won't be like, USB-C ports on our phones. But the headline, the big headline,
I don't think it's really going to make a difference.
Of the Stop Destroying Games Citizens Initiative. We've been covering it from the start, and even we were shocked by the last-minute success. I don't say this to be mean, but genuinely, thanks, Pirate Software, essentially that whole drama exploded to, well, I actually think have a meaningful impact on the Citizens Initiative getting through. Of course, I think one of the last things he said was to the effect of, all right, you got what you want, enjoy eating it. So I suppose we'll all have to wait and see. But the petition did sail over the finish line with more than 1.4 million signatures, and the EU will now consider the demand that businesses operating in the EU must be stopped from remotely disabling video games or rendering.
So, didn't it have, I think it was like 20,000 signatures or something to like right up to like the last day or last couple days, and then it just exploded up over 1 million signatures?
Rendering them non-functional, leaving them in a, quote, functional state without publisher involvement. Will that happen? Who knows? There certainly will be complexities, as we can expect. It's all got the industry talking. There are some devs voicing support, yes, but there's others suggesting that the...
So, the Stop Killing Games initiative is... honestly, it's kind of a headache, because on one end, like, yeah, it would be cool to go back and play like an online game, with your friends after, 10, 15 years, something like that, or get new friends into an old game that you would go back and enjoy again. At the same time, though, I see that being terrible, because if you keep old games running how they were back then and you don't free up that server space, the price of games and everything is just going to skyrocket, because now these publishers and developers and stuff, they need to keep the old game running while working on a new game, plus keep that server space set aside. And now, we all know servers, the space that are allocated for each game fluctuates. Like, what's a big one? Let's say Arc Raiders. As Arc Raiders continues to grow, they're going to put more server space available to have all the players be able to play with their friends and find matches and everything else. But say in a year, if Arc Raiders drops half its player base, they're going to start shutting down some of those servers to save money.
The industry really needs to be engaged with before this stuff is dictated, by a bunch of lawmakers and bureaucrats that probably aren't software engineers. Yeah, people should be consulted. And it's that side, when we're talking about engineering, that I'm the most willing to go with the industry's big cry of, can we please be consulted with? Yeah, that should happen. But the premium currency side, given the sorts of things that the industry does, like targeting children with FOMO, well, I feel less sympathetic.
FOMO.
So you may be wondering, with all this noise, What's actually going on? Where are we now? Is this just a bunch of bureaucratic guff? Well, the signatures are still being verified, but there is now little doubt that they will pass. Concrete action is still a ways off, though. The EU will not receive all the signatures until, at worst, 9 months after the petition passed.
Shit.
And that means April 2026. So, over the summer of next year, we're going to start seeing public hearings and input from the impacted bodies and consumers, and then next autumn, that's when we expect we'll get a formal response. Now, I don't want to sell false hope here. There is no guarantee of change. But as with the rest of the EU's legislative efforts on the DFA, there does seem to be real interest in treating consumers fairly. At least, that's what a lot of people think. That's certainly what they're saying. Obviously, I know there is a often more American-focused perspective of, no, you guys are killing growth. And certainly when it comes to the likes of AI growth, people may point at Mistral and have a bit of a laugh, because Europe is not a serious player in many tech regards.
Yeah, the whole thing with the AI race right now is Europe's not really caring too much about the AI race. Whereas President Trump did a lot with setting up the new what's that program called? I can't think of what that program's called, but when he became president, he gave those companies the leeway to build their own plants and their own power sources to really enhance AI. And I think in some aspects, AI is going to be amazing with what we can do with it. Like, I know one of the major things that they were talking about at first with AI was they want to basically integrate it into America's healthcare system. So instead of it taking, a week to get a diagnosis and needing to be checked, double checked, triple checked, and, confirmed and then retest it months later, you could just plug in a sample into AI, and within, seconds, minutes, whatever it'll be, I need to catch up on everything with AI and see how advanced it's becoming and what they're making it. But it could give you a diagnosis, and then I know they said, within a minute or two after that, it can give you a treatment plan that could potentially, kill off cancer, or what's the best chance and the longest rate of survival with this treatment. So AI is going to be significant in certain aspects. For video games, though, I think they just need to cut AI out. Like, it's ruining games.
There are many perspectives to all of this. But for the next part, we've got to leave the EU whilst still staying in Europe. The UK didn't give nearly as concrete an answer whenever they debated their own version of this, despite MPs actually taking the opportunity to talk about them being gamers. We had MPs talking about Concord, Lawbreakers, the Grand Poo trilogy levels of Kaizo Mario World, and I believe some of the Paradox Grand Strategy games. Let's get ourselves a Hearts of Iron player in the Ministry of Defense. The government did, however, commit to getting the Chartered Trading Standards Institute, yes, that's a lot of words, to improve consumer standards around online games. It's not a big win. It is a win, though, even if it's small. Sometimes that's what people need to get the ball rolling. But other times, well, we've actually got wins without even needing legislators to get involved. Because it turns out that sometimes you need to enforce laws, not implement new ones. Across the world, antitrust movements have been targeting games. We've seen this with Valve, we've seen it with Sony. And the Sony one is fascinating and really underreported. The PlayStation tax is what they're calling it, and it is being challenged in civil suits
there's a PlayStation
in the US
tax?
and the Netherlands, with consumer bodies in the UK and Poland investigating Sony as well. And the claim basically is that PlayStation's decision to restrict official digital product sales only to their platform costs audiences competition. I mean, it kind of does overtly mean less competition, right? Like, that does make sense. We don't have...
Maybe I'm thinking about this the wrong way, but wouldn't it be Sony's choice if they want to release their own PlayStation games on another platform. Like, I know Xbox releases their games on Windows. They release it on Xbox. They're first party titles. They even put them on Steam. And here apparently they put it on Green Man Gaming. I don't know what that is. Well, wouldn't it be Sony's choice if where they want to release it? Their first party titles?
Have a conclusion yet, but those processes are underway and we expect to hear the findings in 2026 and beyond. But what we don't have to wait for is Apple and Google taking some big losses. Because earlier this year, the EU crowbarred open their platforms for third-party apps. Tim Sweeney couldn't be happier, and the US even followed shortly after. And here's the thing with that. Even after Google got bodied, Apple mostly won their original hearing. But then the judge, in a follow-up, actually found that they had completely taken the piss when it came to complying with their very limited concessions. And what I'm talking about here is contempt of court filings. That's actually serious. It's
charges?
Statements that Apple leadership, quote, outright lied under oath. If you do that, you're kind of seen to be a naughty boy. And one of those naughty boys may, in fact, be Tim Cook. And that's because of claims that, in deciding to not comply with legal injunctions, that Tim Cook has, quote, chose poorly. So that made Apple look bad, and it may sting a few people. But if we're talking about looking bad in 2025, come on. There is one story overriding all the others because it's gaming companies across the globe reeling from age verification laws and the fines involved, which I need to remind you, can even go into the billions. How old are you? Let me know, and then send me your passport in the mail so that I know you're not lying. That's the kind.
So, I totally forgot about these age verification things. So my understanding of it is it goes along with like the Online Safety Act from the US and whatever European the EU's Safety Act for their kids is that basically to access like certain games you have to provide proof of your age. So let's use Kingdom Come Deliverance because I've been playing that recently. So to like access that game as it's a mature rated game, you have to upload proof that you are 17 or older. Well, at least here in the US, you have to be 17 or older. That's so stupid, man. Blizzard tried to do something similar back in the day with like their real name policy, and it just didn't work.
Kind of thing that's been going on, or at least that's how it's kind of felt. And that question is one that's defined this year. What was first hinted at with experiments in Discord, just them getting ahead of Australian and UK legislation, even as new laws did spread across a dozen US states and the EU, is now kind of impacting everyone. It's impacting our console profiles, our Steam store access, modding sites, and so much more. And even before these laws, namely the UK's Online Safety Act, came into effect, we actually saw browser games like the Urban Dead simply look at the problem, look at the fines, and then decide to give up and just shut down because they could not afford the legal fees.
Urban Dead will be closing down Friday, March 14th, 2025 due to upcoming change in UK website legislation. Online Safety Act comes into force later this month, applying to all social and gaming websites where users interact, and especially those without strong age restrictions, with the possibility of heavy corporate-sized fines, even for solo web projects like this one. I've reluctantly concluded that it doesn't look feasible for Urban Dead to be able to continue operating. So governments are killing games, basically. But 19 years, 8 months, and 11 days after its quarantine began. Damn. Take your peace or your final stand in whichever part of Malton you called home, and the game will be switched off at noon on 14th of March. Oh, damn. Be announced. So if it's ever revived or spun off in the future, it will be announced on the website. I'll be happy to refund any IP unlock donations made in the past 6 months on request, since this shutdown was an unexpected one. Glad that the game stayed up. You can scavenge me a freeze-dried coffee. So shit. I mean, I never played Urban Dead, but from my understanding, Urban Dead was actually kind of a popular web browser game. I know it kind of fell off, throughout the years, like every game does. But to be up for 19 years, 8 months, and 11 days, and then the UK's Online Safety Act, just damn, bro. Yeah, these
to even
governments are
find out whether
wild
they were
these
compliant,
days.
and they couldn't risk the potential 25 million cost of a fine. That's certainly one way of getting around the problem, and allegedly another way has been some companies essentially choosing, allegedly anyway, not to implement in-game chat features until well after launch, basically so they could avoid the biggest risks going on right now. And of course, much of this stuff simply doesn't work. You see, depending on the service, kids immediately found out ways to get around the verification using pictures of adults, or even characters from video games. But the success rate was never the point here. And I know that may seem like a bit of a shock. No, it's about these companies being seen to take action. Because whenever controversy strikes, as it has for a game like Roblox, what these laws are a legal stick that the government now has in its arsenal to absolutely clobber the shit out of companies with. But as we also found out,
they can shut down anything at any time they want to.
And don't always need to make a new one to hit a company with. Indeed, if the US Congress hadn't been shut down, then the CEOs of Discord and Steam would have been called to testify on how they were protecting kids from extremism, and this would have been going on in the wake of the Charlie Kirk assassination. Of course,
yeah, Charlie Kirk assassination kind of set a precedent of Congress. Like, I know Congress had a bunch of say court hearings before, and I use that term loosely. But the Charlie Kirk assassination and how much of testimony and hearings they had after that just kind of set all this into precedence. But I lost my train of thought of where I was going with this. Oh yeah, there was that game. What was that game? Roblox. Like, Roblox shut down recently, and I know that was a huge one with their online scandals about with the kids. And that was a major perpetrator of a lot of these age verifications for video games that are coming up. Roblox, with that whole scandal, kind of threw the gaming industry back. I'd say probably about a good 5-10 years. A lot of parents right now are not trusting video games and not letting their kids play because they're afraid of a whole nother Roblox scandal. I mean, shit, I'm in my 30s. I cannot imagine any of these protections and how this shit would have went over in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Of course, that's because the suspect was active on those platforms, which is hardly a surprise given the demography, but still, those company CEOs would have been before Congress. What would have happened? I can't say. You can't say, because
companies are going to protect themselves.
And it didn't happen.
It's that simple.
Maybe it will happen again, and whenever it does, who knows what change it will lead to. But regardless, there's a principle that's drove everyone's actions, and the ex-owner of Nexus Mods is actually the one who put it best. Quote, "The law is the law, and Nexus Mods will and must follow the law." This was a top-down imposition by governments with the power to inflict material damage. It didn't matter that the original intent was to protect kids from the biggest and most predatory aspects of social media. Gaming was basically caught in the crossfire and simply had to react to the blows.
I don't think that was the biggest intent of this, honestly. Protecting kids, I believe, is the most forward-facing of it. But on the backside, where it's not so much publicized, it was more of a way for governments to gain control of the video game industry. I know recently it's been more like this, but I mean, thinking back to when I was a kid in the 90s, a teenager in the early 2000s, there wasn't any real government oversight into video games. And now governments are finally catching up and they want to have that oversight. So this is one way to do it. Yeah, I will grant it is about protecting kids. But again, I don't see that being the whole reason for this.
as they came. It essentially is an industry disrupted. So where are we then? Are our video games suddenly going to be illegal? Who knows, but here's how I'll sum it all up. This was a year where the industry got blindsided. There were costs incurred from tariffs, there was the outrage from audiences around Stop Killing Games, and the EU's challenge on monetization. There's the total impact of the age verification laws across all the different countries and territories. In almost every case, the industry has no levers to protect itself. Trade bodies have done what they can, but are frequently seen by audiences as only seeing the biggest companies. For a good reason. That's kind of how they've acted. I think we all remember, well, it's a story that'll never really leave my mind. It's the ESA's efforts against the preservation of video games. So whenever they act like that, well, it's hardly a surprise that people don't feel great about them and aren't willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. But unfortunately,
they don't want to protect any older
smaller scale developers who seem like they just have to do it all by themselves. Because when new laws come, or existing ones get new frameworks for their enforcement, the big companies are the ones with the resources to afford compliance. It's often the small companies that will struggle to be compliant. And it's always
a lot of indie game studios are gonna get hit hard by this. Ubisoft, EA, Microsoft, Sony's first parties, I know I said Microsoft already, but their first party games that they publish. What are other big ones? Rockstar with their publisher Take-Two. Even if they would get fined, they'll be able to handle it. I mean, especially Rockstar and Take-Two. They made, what is it, billions now off of GTA Online. So they'll be able to handle all of this. But your smaller indie studios like Manor take, for example, if they somehow become out of compliance with this, they're not going to be able to do anything about it.
Possible that a well-meaning law can have unintended consequences. And as much as there's many things I think many of us do support that have been mentioned throughout this video, for many developers, they are of course also seeing a lot of legal flux around the industry that pays their bills. Let me know what you think. What's this impact been in your company? And if you want to listen to something interesting next, well, boy have I got a good one. Have a look up here.
It's gonna be Expedition 33 destroyed AAA excuses. Yeah, Expedition 33 won so many fucking awards. But yeah, no, I see with all these new laws going into effect and everything, the gaming industry is gonna it's gonna go backwards before you get any type of stable ground to continue going forward. It's going to be a bunch of these companies, especially smaller companies, are going to comply with the law, and they're going to, again, this is just my opinion. They're going to comply with these laws. They're going to follow it to the letter. They're going to try to make and then, in maybe 5 years, 10 years, we're going to see a resurgence of people who, quite frankly, just don't give a damn. And they're going to make games how they want to make games, regardless of what the law says. And we're going to see a resurgence of games being pushed out that are just going to kind of go against whatever the governments say. The government's putting these out about trying to control games, in my opinion, is an overreach. More due to the simple fact that they're using it they're making these laws in a way that gives them complete and total control. Yeah, it gives them complete and total control over what is going on in a media form. But they're saying it's for kids. Now, granted, while, some of the younger kids do need protections, you shouldn't need age verification for certain things. Like if you want to buy a PlayStation and play a game, you shouldn't need age verification. We already have verifications in different forms. But yeah, no, that was a good video. I always love Bellular News. I can't say that for some reason. He always makes fantastic videos.